How do I perform a titration with the wireless drop counter in Chemvue? I've already connected my drop counter and pH sensor, and they are already both calibrated. You want to set up your drop counter syringe with it empty. Add the clamp, snap the clamp right onto that syringe and push it to the top of the reservoir. And then add the 2 stopcock valves hand tight and then arrange them so that they're in line with one another. Then add the drop tip to the very last valve. The valves are closed when they are in the horizontal position and open in the vertical position. So now you have to set up the valve to allow drops through the drop tip at an appropriate rate for the drop counter. That means distinct drops are coming out so that you can see each individual drop so that it can be counted accurately when the drop falls through the drop counter window. Start by closing the top valve and use the top valve as the close open valve. So open and close here. Close it. Add a few milliliters, rinse it out a couple times with your titrant. Then your bottom valve, fully open it and close it up just a little bit and start in a position similar to this, where you have slightly closed bottom valve. And then over a waste beaker, position the beaker under the drop tip. Open the valve at the top all the way and adjust, make slight adjustments to your bottom valve until you get the desired rate. And once you're there, then close the syringe and fill up the reservoir as much as desired. Fill it full before the beginning of titration for convenience. And then you can put it on the rod stand. Next, prepare the pH sensor. So the pH sensor needs to have the micro stir bar, which comes with the drop counter, attached to the bottom, so that when it's at the end of the probe, the magnet can spin freely in a 360-degree motion without striking the probe end. So then you set the pH sensor with that micro stir bar into a beaker. My beaker has the analyte, so whatever volume of analyte I'm using, usually it's the unknown, plus distilled water so that it's full enough to cover the end of the probe along with the housing for the micro stir bar. So you've got analyte plus distilled water. Turn on the magnetic stir so that the stir bar creates a vortex to break the surface at the top of the fluid, going a little bit into the beaker, and also not splashing and minimizing bubbles. So check to make sure that the magnet on the micro stir bar on the pH sensor is spinning in a 360-degree circle rather than rocking back and forth or changing direction. You definitely want it to go in the same direction the whole time without striking either the bar magnet or the beaker. Nothing should be hitting anything inside of the beaker. The only thing that should be moving are the magnets. They should be spinning freely, and then the water is responding to the magnet motion, or the solution that you have in here. Okay, everything is connected and ready to go now. I'm going to go to Chemvue and choose a graph page. On this display, I've got fluid volume automatically on the x-axis and pH automatically on the y-axis when you've got the pH and drop counter connected. I'm going to start recording data, but I don't see any recorded points yet because no drops are coming through the drop counter window. You want to position the drop tip so that it's hovering slightly above the level of the sensor, but it's positioned so that drops go through the center of the window and drop into the vortex into the beaker without getting spilling or hitting inside of the drop counter window. So let's begin. Open all the way my top valve. And as the drops are coming through, I can now see on the graph I'm getting some data points because I have X and Y values. I also see the drop light flashing, and that tells me, in case you're not getting data when drops are coming through, that tells me that the window does see the drops coming through. One thing that may happen to you is you might have some splash or something blocking the sensor in the drop counter window. Make sure that's clean before you start your titration. So my titration is running, and we can see the pH is slowly increasing with the addition of the titrant. And by the way, I've got a known molarity of base up here in my syringe being dropped into an unknown concentration of an acid. So we're doing a neutralization reaction, watching the pH change. Started off as a slow change. We're seeing an increasing pace in the change of pH, as we would expect. And we're going to allow data collection to continue through until we pass the equivalence point, where we're going to see the greatest change in pH over time, or per drop per volume of titrant added. And we can definitely see that rate is increasing and increasing, continues to increase. As more titrant is added, pH is going up, and when we see that the graph is automatically adjusting and we've got a large amount of change occurring here, we must be approaching the equivalence point, certainly. It's still changing pretty fast, and it looks like it's already starting to slow down. So we've already passed the equivalence point, and we can use analysis tools once we've stopped recording data. Those will become available on the left side of the graph. So you can analyze your titration data and calculate the concentration of your unknown acid concentration. It looks like we are leveling off in the pH, and now we're just increasing pH from only base being added. So we can turn off the flow of drops, and then we can stop recording data.